Today is the day my fiancé, Michael, and I are getting our marriage license. After waiting for him at the Civil Affairs Bureau for 3 hours, I finally managed to get through to his phone. The only person who could answer was his first love. "Emily, where is Michael?" I asked. "Michael is cooking for me. Do you need something, Miss Jenny?" He let out a sarcastic, cold laugh. I had been with Michael for 2 years and had no idea he could cook. At that moment, Michael's voice came. From the other end of the line, "Jenny, Emily almost fainted today, and her family isn't around. I'm taking care of her," I laughed. What a perfect time to pass out. I tightened my grip on the phone. "Michael, I just want to ask you one thing. You still coming over today to get the marriage certificate with me?" "Jenny, I can't leave right now." "It won't make a difference if we get the certificate a few days later." Michael's tone was a bit impatient. I was about to speak when I faintly heard Emily exclaim on the other end, "Oh no, it's so hot." The call was hung up immediately. Without even seeing it myself, I could already imagine the scene. Michael, full of heartache, comforting his first love at that moment. Ever since Emily returned, whenever she slightly reddened her eyes in front of Michael, he looked like his heart was breaking. I've never received such attention from Michael before. In his eyes, I should be understanding and empathetic. He never realized that I am also a woman and sometimes need his care too. I instinctively felt a tightness in my chest, but it wasn't the pain I'd imagined. Listening to the busy tone on the phone, I took a deep breath, a mocking smile curling on my lips, and tiredly sent a message. "Michael, let's break up. Enough. Since he wants to pursue his first love, I'll let them be." Just as I walked out of the Civil Affairs Bureau, I saw Daniel standing at the dorm, my boss and the president. Of the group, I was momentarily stunned. As his secretary, I didn't know this was part of his schedule today. "President, are you getting married today too?" Daniel looked at me with his dark eyes and gave a faint "Well then, congratulations." I initially wanted to ask how he came to get married alone, but as his secretary, I knew I shouldn't overstep and pry into his personal matters. So I swallowed my words. Daniel smiled faintly. "Secretary Jenny, would you like to marry me?" I was taken aback. Huh. What a coincidence? Could it be that Daniel was also abandoned? Daniel's voice was low and steady. "Since it's just you and me now, why don't we get married?" Thinking of the message Michael had just sent, I said, "Stop it, Michael. Emily is really sick. Be good. Let's talk about getting our marriage certificate in a few days." I smiled at Daniel and replied, "Sure." Within less than 10 minutes, I had a freshly issued marriage certificate in my hand. Looking at the photo, I suddenly wondered if I'd been a bit impulsive. Daniel asked softly, "What's wrong? Having second thoughts?" I pressed my lips together and retorted, "President, are you having a spat with Miss Zhang?" I knew a little about my boss's private life. I'd even helped pick out gifts for Miss Zhang, although I'd never met her. A woman who could capture Daniel's attention must be someone special. Daniel looked at me, his voice very faint. "She doesn't have that qualification." I nodded. "Secretary Jenny, you'll know in the future." Generally obeyed my boss's orders after all. But I felt that just now Daniel's gaze seemed to carry a hint of sorrow, which didn't match his usual domineering CEO persona. After ending things with Daniel, I returned to my apartment. When I was with Michael, we didn't really live together, so I bought myself this small apartment. When I got home, I immediately deleted and blocked all of Michael's contact info. After that, he would walk his own narrow path, and I would walk my broad road. Suddenly, I remembered that my sunny path now had Daniel added to it. He said to give me a week to adjust, then I would have to move in with him. Just think about it, having to face him almost 24 hours a day. During the day, he's my boss, and at night, he's suddenly felt a bit lost. I didn't understand why Daniel would suggest marrying me. Could it be that he was also upset about Miss Young? I'd only been his secretary for a month, and didn't really know him well yet. Still, I agreed. Thinking of Daniel's face, I knew I shouldn't be feeling tempted. I should be strong. My righteous spirit was wandering when my phone suddenly rang with a strange number. "Hello, Jenny. Have you blocked me?" Michael's voice came through, gritted with anger. Could imagine the dark look on his face right then. That's just how he was after being together so long. Whenever I lost my temper, he thought I was unreasonable and would immediately turn sour. I didn't know why, but every day Emily would cause a scene in front of him, and he seemed blind. Too enabled to see. Yesterday I might have still tried to accommodate him, coax him, but not anymore. Yeah, we've broken up. So why bother keeping him unblocked? What's the point? A mocking tone seemed to irritate Michael even more. Can you stop making a scene? If you want that marriage certificate, just go get it tomorrow, I snapped. I was so angry I laughed. Michael, you're not the only man in the world, you, Mr. Chance. Hung up immediately, blocked his number, and did it all in one go. The next day I went downstairs to head to work. As I was leaving the community gate, a car pulled up beside me. It was familiar, the same car Michael drives. He got out and walked straight over to me. Jenny, have you come down? Can you be a bit more sensible? Blocking contact is such a childish thing to do. I rolled my eyes silently and said, Mr. Michael, have you lost your memory? We've already broken up. Michael looked at me deeply, as if he'd only just realized I wasn't joking. Emily was really sick. Yesterday, I was just taking care of her. If you're angry about that, I apologize. Apologies are so perfunctory, I said. I don't know how I managed to endure the past 2 years. I let out a low sigh, feeling a pang of sympathy for my former self. I looked up at him. Michael, we all know what your relationship with Emily is. Yes. As your ex-girlfriend, I kindly advise you to choose your friends wisely. He stepped aside. Jenny, what do you mean? What did Emily do to offend you? She's just a good friend. Sure enough, she was the one he held dear, and he wouldn't let me say a single bad word. About her, I shrugged nonchalantly and pushed Michael aside to hail a taxi. Just then, a black Bentley stopped next to me. The driver got out and approached politely. Madam, sir has matters to attend to today, so I am here to take you to work, he said. I was stunned for a few seconds before realizing that sir must be referring to Daniel. Maybe this was the aftershock of a whirlwind, marriage I had almost forgotten. I married him yesterday. Before I could say anything, Michael looked at the driver in shock. First, what did you just call her? He asked. The driver glanced at him. She's my boss's wife, of course. She's called Madam. Michael looked even more incredulous. Jenny, when did you get married? I uttered the 2 words lightly, no longer paying attention to Michael, and got into the car. This news must have been a blow to Michael. After all, he'd always been confident that I was indispensable to him, even though he kept leaving me during our dates for Emily. Ultimately, I decided to forgive him, but this time I wouldn't back down at the company. I quickly shifted into work mode first, organizing the documents from each department that needed Daniel's approval, and handing them over to his assistant, Tom. Tom didn't take the documents immediately, but smiled and said, Secretary, Jenny, from now on, you can deliver the documents in person. I felt a bit awkward when I was suddenly promoted to the role of the president's secretary. Tom had mentioned a lot of things to be careful about, one of which was not to enter Daniel's office casually. He explained that the president had instructed that I could come and go from his office at will. His tone carried a hint of importance, and I guessed he probably knew about Daniel and me getting our marriage certificate. Reluctantly, I knocked on the door while holding the documents, unsure how to face Daniel. It was a little strange knowing that your boss has become your husband. Behind the large desk, Daniel was deeply focused on some documents. I quickly set down the papers and tried to slip out quietly. Secretary Jenny, a typically calm voice came from behind. I took a deep breath, put on a professional smile, and turned around. President, the documents are already on the desk. Is there anything else you'd like me to do? Daniel put down his pen, leaned back in his chair, crossed his arms, and looked at me with a half-smile. I raised my hand to touch my face, realizing I'd put on some light makeup that morning. Maybe my makeup had smudged a little. After a moment, Daniel finally spoke slowly. Have you had breakfast? I responded quickly. President, are you planning to buy breakfast? I'll go right now. I'd tried several times before to get Tom to order breakfast for Daniel, but it never worked out. Daniel curled his lips and teased, Secretary, Jenny is really a great employee. Otherwise, the president wouldn't suddenly promote a newcomer like you to be my secretary. Honestly, I wasn't being modest. I genuinely couldn't think of any other reason. I had originally applied for a position in the company's design department, but I was told I was accepted as the president's secretary. If not for the doubled salary, I wouldn't have taken this secretarial job. Daniel's eyes flickered when I said that, and he raised his hand to point toward the coffee table. "There's breakfast over there. Go eat," he said. I was taken aback, confused, not understanding what he meant. Daniel patiently repeated, "Your stomach issues are because you don't eat on time, especially breakfast. That's for you. Eat a little." My boss had brought me breakfast. I always had a bad feeling about this, and I wondered how he knew about my stomach condition. I thought to myself, how does he know I have a stomach problem? How does he know I don't eat breakfast? I asked him, "President, how did you know I have a stomach problem? How did you know I don't eat breakfast?" He replied casually, "You're my secretary. Shouldn't I get to know you a little?" He paused, looked at me again, and added, "Secretary Jenny, have you forgotten that you're not only my employee now, but also the person on my marriage certificate? I definitely don't want to lose my wife right after we got married." Those words sounded cold and heartless, yet they made my heart tighten slightly, and warmth suddenly spread through my eyes. I had been with Michael for 2 years, and he'd never noticed that I had stomach issues or reminded me to eat on time. I remembered one time I had a stomach ache and felt really uncomfortable. I called him and asked him to buy me some medicine. He immediately said, "You can buy it yourself on the delivery platform," and before I could say anything, he hung up. Later, I found out from a friend that the urgent matter he was busy with that day was to pick up Emily, who had just landed at the airport. I knew that with Michael, I would always come second to Emily. Maybe back then. He only kept me around because Emily hadn't returned yet. I was just a substitute secretary. The pleasant scent of his cologne suddenly wafted into my nostrils, snapping me back to reality. I looked up and saw Daniel's handsome face close to mine. My heart started racing inexplicably. "President, is there something you need?" I asked, feeling suddenly nervous. All the repressed emotions I'd been holding in vanished completely. Daniel gently tapped my forehead with his hand. "What are you daydreaming about?" "Hurry up and eat your breakfast," he said. That small gesture made my face flush with embarrassment. I instinctively looked toward the doorway, worried it might be awkward if someone walked in and saw us. Even though I married Daniel, I still didn't want people at the company to find out. Who knows what kind of gossip would spread behind my back. Daniel looked at me cautiously and furrowed his brow. "Don't worry," he said softly. "Not just anyone can come into my office." I quickly walked over to the coffee table, picked up my breakfast, and said, "Oh, then I'll take it back to my desk to eat." I paused for a moment, as if realizing something, and silently sat down on the sofa beside him. "Feeling a bit awkward," I said. "Then I'll eat here before I go out." The office was so quiet now that it felt almost too still, making me afraid to chew too loudly for fear of breaking the silence. I have to say, the breakfast Daniel prepared was exactly to my taste. He seems like a really considerate person. I instinctively looked up at the man behind the desks, so noble and refined, incredibly handsome. I often saw some female colleagues swooning over Daniel at work. Before, I just thought of him as my boss and didn't notice it. Now that I looked at him seriously, I realized he's quite attractive. It's hard to believe I actually married him. Noticing my gaze, Daniel looked up at me. I hurriedly averted my eyes, finished the last bite of my breakfast, stood up and said, "President, I've finished eating. I'll go out to work now." I headed toward the door, but a gentle voice from behind stopped me. "Madam, let's have dinner together tonight." I didn't agree or refuse right away and quickly rushed outside, mainly because I couldn't stand hearing that word, madam. Before I was with Michael, I was always the one chasing after him. Being treated like this, especially by my own boss, felt quite unsettling. Soon it was time to leave work. I had finished my tasks and it was already 7 p.m. I glanced at the brightly lit president's office, unsure when he'd finish. He probably hadn't forgotten about the lunch we talked about this morning, right? It was better not to think about it, Tiff. I kept staring at Daniel's face too long. My little heart might not survive. It's just as I was lost in thought, a message popped up on WeChat. * Daniel, wait for me in the parking lot. * I let out a quiet sigh and resigned myself to heading into the parking lot. As I stood at the entrance of the elevator hall, I ran into John, the marketing manager, as he was walking out. I nodded slightly. "Aim," I said softly. John looked at me intently. "Jenny, when do you have time? Let's have a meal together." I frowned. When I first joined the company, John occasionally asked me out for dinner. I refused him several times, but he remained persistent. I knew he had feelings for me. I was just about to politely decline when my phone rang. Seeing Daniel's name on the caller ID, I quickly answered, "Hello, B-Export. "Okay, I'm on my way," he responded after. Hanging up, I greeted John and hurried toward the exit. Seeing the Bentley in the morning, I instinctively opened the back door to get in. But then I heard Daniel's calm voice from the driver's seat. "Does Secretary Jenny really think I'm the driver?" I smiled awkwardly and sat down in the passenger seat. Daniel glanced over and said, "Secretary Jenny is quite popular, huh?" His tone was a bit sarcastic, and it took me a moment to realize that he'd seen me talking to John. Could he be jealous? Realizing that, I suddenly felt braver. I looked him straight in the eyes and called him by his name. Daniel just hummed softly in response without saying anything and started driving. I could see that he stiffened for a moment. An awkwardness that comes when someone pokes at your heart's thoughts. The restaurant we went to for dinner was a 5-star Western place. Being with the big boss definitely makes life feel a lot better. While waiting for our dishes, I excused myself to go to the restroom. When I walked out, I saw Daniel on the other side of the dining hall making a phone call. Just as he finished and hung up, I was about to walk over to him. Suddenly, I saw a familiar figure bump into Daniel, though it seemed accidental. But that woman was Emily, wasn't she? I thought to myself. Sorry, Emily apologized. To Daniel, her face flushed with embarrassment. Her voice was sweet and delicate, sending a shiver down my spine. Daniel took a big step back and glanced at her. Emily looked even more shy. "Hello, sir. Can we add each other on WeChat?" she asked softly. I watched the scene, noticing Emily stomp her foot in frustration. I could tell she was deliberately trying to flirt with Daniel. If Michael found out, he wouldn't know what to think. After all, Emily was his first love, his purest one deep in his heart. Back at the dining table, the dishes had already been served. I was a little surprised Daniel had ordered all my favorites. It seemed he really understood me. Midway through the meal, a familiar voice interrupted. "Miss Jenny, what are you doing here?" I didn't need to look up to know it was Emily. Almost immediately, I heard Michael's furious voice. "Jenny, are you breaking up with me because of another man?" Originally, I wanted to ignore them, but hearing their questions directed at me, I couldn't help but respond. "Where I am and what I'm doing isn't any of your business," I said coldly. Emily looked a bit wronged, but this was a 5-star couples restaurant. I wasn't going to indulge her. This restaurant belongs to your family, right? "Do you think I can't afford to eat here, or that I can't come with other men?" I challenged. When Michael heard me talk about Emily as his first love like that, his face darkened. "Jenny, it's clearly your fault. Why are you so aggressive? Who is this man? Why are you with him?" he demanded. A detached voice suddenly sounded behind us. Daniel, who had been facing away, slowly turned around. His cold gaze swept over the two of them. Seeing Daniel, Emily was taken aback. The hint of triumph at the corner of her mouth slowly shifted into jealousy. How could the man she'd just set her sights on be here? Michael looked intimidated by Daniel's cold aura. I stepped up, linked my arm with Daniel's, and said with a light laugh, "Let me introduce you. This is my husband, Daniel." Michael was stunned. He had said Daniel looked familiar. He remembered seeing the president of the group from a distance at a cocktail party. When I first became Daniel's secretary, I mentioned it to Michael. He had casually said that people of such status should only value your abilities. At the time, I had no way to make Daniel like me. But he seemed to forget that I was once among the top 3 most good-looking students in school. Daniel looked down at me and said softly, "I'm Jenny's boss, but I'm also her husband now. Since Mr. Michael knows my identity, he should stop bothering my wife." He didn't even glance at Michael, who, despite being a wealthy second-generation heir, was no match for Daniel. Daniel was holding back his anger, but couldn't hide his disdain. Michael could only glare silently. Emily clenched her fists. She hadn't missed Jenny saying she was going to get a marriage certificate with Michael yesterday. How had she ended up marrying Daniel? She still couldn't believe I was so lucky. I coldly said, "Then I should thank you. If you hadn't pestered Michael yesterday, I might have missed out on Yunjo." I paused, raised an eyebrow, and added, "But, Emily, you seemed quite interested in my man." I took out my phone, clicked a few times, and handed it to Michael. "Take a look at what your innocent, kind-hearted girl is really like." Intended to go this far, but Emily kept provoking me. The video showed her trying to flirt with Daniel, and I had caught it all on camera. Emily leaned over to look at the screen, her eyes widening in surprise. This Michael wasn't foolish. He clearly understood how Emily felt about Daniel, but he wasn't sure whether to protect his pride or to choose to believe Emily. He looked at me with a grim expression. "Jenny, I know very well what kind of person Emily is. Do you think this video proves anything? Look at yourself, your fiancé turned around and married someone else. Haven't you already been with your boss while pretending to want to break up with me? Everything Michael says is my fault in his eyes. I've betrayed him. It's honestly ridiculous. I must have been out of my mind to like him in the first place." Emily sighed with relief at Michael's words, a flicker of pride flashing in her eyes. She knew Michael would always be on her side. I mocked him softly. "It doesn't matter what you think anymore. I've fulfilled your wish with Emily, and I've married him too. Let's each go our own way from now on. And if we meet again, let's pretend we don't know each other." Just as Michael was about to speak, he was cut off coldly by Daniel. "Mr. Michael," Daniel said smoothly, "before we got our marriage certificate yesterday, Jenny and I only had a professional relationship. We don't owe you any explanations. But I don't want to hear anyone slandering my wife." That, he picked up the bag beside me and took my hand. "Let's go," he said softly, leading me out of the restaurant. No one had ever cared for me like this before. In that moment, my weary heart felt a little pissant, a flutter of excitement. A week passed in the blink of an eye. I gradually got used to my relationship with Daniel. Although at work he didn't give me any special attention because of our relationship, in everyday life, he was quite a good husband, attentive and thoughtful. I suddenly felt very lucky. That day I was left by Michael at the Civil Affairs Bureau, and I ended up marrying Daniel. I never understood. Did Daniel really leave that day? Did he act out of anger and decide to marry me? I once asked him, and he just smiled and said the timing wasn't right yet. I didn't ask again after that. According to our previous agreement, I moved into Daniel's villa, but I had just moved in when Daniel went on a business trip, which helped avoid the awkwardness of starting to live together. Even when no one was around, they still reminded me every day to eat on time. My stomach illness didn't flare up again. During this time, after work today, I returned to my small apartment and packed a few things to take to the villa. As I stepped outside, a gust of chilly autumn wind blew in. I walked to the intersection to hail a taxi. Suddenly a shadow appeared behind me, getting closer and closer. I was just about to quicken my pace when a large hand grabbed my arm. I screamed in fright. "Ah, Jenny, it's me," Michael's voice called out. I looked up in shock and saw him right in front of me. "Michael, what are you doing here?" I asked. "I've been waiting for you for days, and I finally found you," he said. His breath carried a strong smell of alcohol. I furrowed my brows and shook off his hand forcefully. "We've already broken up. What are you waiting for?" "Jenny, you were right all along. Emily lied to me. She just wanted to find a richer man," Michael admitted. It seemed he watched that video that day and didn't doubt Emily at all, maybe even investigated her. I raised an eyebrow. "Congratulations. You've finally seen her for who she really is. But what does that have to do with me?" Michael's expression darkened. "I'm sorry, Jenny. Can't we not break up?" I laughed bitterly. "My first love that let me down? No, I realized only to see my worth. Michael, I married him. Even if I hadn't married him, we still wouldn't be possible. Ask yourself, in these past 2 years, did you really like me? Or did you just see me as a substitute for Emily?" Suddenly, I remembered a time when Michael got drunk and kept shouting Jenny. Now that I think about it, he probably wanted to call out Emily. In his heart, there was only Emily. I was just too foolish before moved by every word he said to me. Michael was silent for a moment, then suddenly grasped my hand tightly. Jenny, I've thought about it. What I like is you. I didn't realize. I had fallen for you, truly. His words hit me like still water, quiet but deeply stirring. So, just because you say you like me, does that mean I have to like you back? Please don't contact me again. I don't want my husband to misunderstand. Hearing my words, Michael's eyes turned red with fear and he gripped my hand tighter. I tried hard to shake him off, but I couldn't. A sudden sense of fear crept in. Michael suddenly let go when he was knocked off balance by a punch, nearly falling to the ground. It was Daniel. Seeing him, my heart immediately calmed down. Daniel squinted at Michael. Michael, I warned you not to disturb my wife again, Daniel said sternly. Michael wiped a trace of blood from the corner of his mouth, which was bleeding. From a punch? Under the influence of alcohol? He looked much bolder facing Daniel. Jenny is my fiancée. You're the one who intruded on our relationship, Michael said arrogantly. I looked at him with a smile, showing no mercy. Michael, isn't it ridiculous to act all sentimental now? I'm married to Daniel, and I'm just his wife. You should go do whatever you need to do and stop showing up in front of us, I said firmly. After that, I pulled Daniel away, leaving Michael stunned in place. We got into the car, and I hesitated for a moment before speaking. I came over to pick something up. But I don't know how Michael ended up here, I explained, not wanting to cause any unnecessary misunderstandings, even if Daniel might. Overthink it? Daniel murmured softly. I know you're okay. That simple sentence warmed my heart a little. He came to find me as soon as he returned from his business trip. That must be what it feels like to be truly valued by someone. Daniel hammed without waiting for his response. I leaned in and hugged him tightly. In that moment, I considered him my husband, not just my boss. I could feel his body stiffen slightly. Then he raised his hand to hold me back. Jenny, I'll always be here for you, he whispered reassuringly, as if he'd finally gotten his wish. No man had ever said such words to me before. My heart was pounding like a drum. If I weren't so clear-headed, I might think Daniel had liked me for a long time. That weekend, I stayed home planning to paint. I studied design in college, but I hadn't picked up a brush in a long time. I called Daniel to ask if I could use his study. Daniel, can I use your study to paint? I asked. There was a pause on the other end. Then he replied, the room next to my study. You can go there. To paint, okay. By the way, when will you be back? Almost done? Do you want some dessert? I brought you some, I added. I was momentarily taken aback, but then smiled. If it's not too much trouble, please help me bring it when you come back. I usually enjoy sweets, but I didn't expect. Daniel too noticed. After hanging up, I grabbed my painting tools and headed to the room Daniel mentioned. I'd moved here about half a month ago and had never entered this room before. As soon as I opened the door, I was shocked. It was an art studio filled with many painting supplies. However, none of them had been unwrapped or used. I wondered, did Daniel also like to paint? As his secretary, I knew basic things about him, but painting wasn't listed among his interests. Still, the studio was so comfortable that I quickly got immersed in painting. After some time, the door suddenly swung open. Daniel walked in holding a box of pastries and a bouquet of yellow roses. Are you done with the painting? He asked. I put down my brush and stood to face him. It's been a while since I last painted. So I'm a bit out of practice, I replied. Daniel examined my painting with a faint smile. Not bad. Your skills haven't declined. I was distracted by what he was holding. Was that for me? Of course, he said softly. It's for the lady. Girls should all like flowers. He handed me the bouquet, and the rich fragrance immediately enveloped me, making me smile involuntarily. Thank you. This must be what it feels like to be cherished by someone, I said softly. He then opened the dessert, a delicate strawberry-flavored cake. My favorite, Daniel. I think you really understand your employees, I teased. He looked at me, lips curling slightly. Only by understanding you, I blushed, quickly changing the subject. How did you get this art studio at home? Do you also know how to paint? His eyes lifted slightly. I can't draw, he said casually. This was prepared for you, he added, cutting me off before I could say more. If I said I hadn't noticed anything unusual, that would be foolish. I looked up at him, wondering, how did you know I could draw? I was quite sure I never mentioned that on my resume. Daniel replied calmly, Madame, initially you applied for the design department. Those who study design can definitely draw a bit. He gestured toward the studio. This studio is clearly set up for oil painting. You know I like to paint in oil? I stared straight at him, trying to read his subtle expressions, but he was very composed. His face showed no hint of guilt. Just smiled faintly and said, just wait a little longer, I'll tell you. He paused for a moment before adding, Secretary Jenny, next week is Peking University's anniversary. Please help me arrange the schedule. Then he turned and walked out of the studio. I was a bit slow to realize that Daniel was also from Peking University. But someone like him must be a prominent figure there. How had I never heard of him before? A few days later was Peking University's anniversary. I hadn't planned to go back, but Daniel was invited, so I accompanied him as his secretary. After looking at some relevant information, I realized that the Yi Group donated a significant amount of money to Peking University every year. No wonder the university listed Daniel as a special guest. Since graduating, I hadn't been back to campus for a long time. Taking advantage of Daniel and the others talking business with the principal, I wandered around the campus alone. It's a small world. Unexpectedly, I ran into Emily again. She really was a student here, so it wasn't surprising to see her. I quickly looked away, pretending I hadn't seen her, and took a different path. But when she saw me, she immediately came over, no longer showing the frailty she had in front of Michael. She shouted at me with a superiority that made my blood boil. Jenny, did you say something to Michael? Is that why he's been ignoring me lately? She demanded. I frowned. That day Michael wanted to get back together with me, and it seemed he wasn't just talking drunkenly. He really had abandoned Emily. I smirked sarcastically. You know very well what you've done behind Michael's back. Michael isn't a fool, I added. Emily's face twisted with anger. It's all your fault. If you hadn't shown that video to Michael, he wouldn't have suspected me. You did this on purpose, as revenge, I said coldly. Emily's arrogant face distorted further with anger. After a moment of thought, she sneered, Aren't you just clinging to a rich man? Do you really think a man like Daniel is sincere with you? He's just playing with you. At that moment, Daniel's deep voice rang out as he approached, rapping, his arm around my waist. His gaze was icy as he looked at Emily, speaking each word deliberately. The only person I've ever truly liked in my life is my wife. That stunned both Emily and me. Emily's face froze, her heart shattering into pieces. Her eyes filled with jealousy, no matter what tricks she tried to use to seduce Daniel. It seemed unlikely now, and Daniel's words finally made me understand something I'd always overlooked. I looked at him, and my heart pounded like a drum. If I weren't so clear-headed, I might think he had liked me for a long time. Daniel, I asked softly, have you known me for a long time? Daniel chuckled lightly, but didn't answer directly. Instead, he said, I'll take you to a place. Emily's unwilling gaze lingered as we left. Our fingers intertwined. The place Daniel took me was the art studio at Peking University. I was very familiar with it from my 4 years in college. I'd come here to paint whenever I had free time. I tilted my head slightly, asking, How do you know about this place? Are you really a student at Peking University? Daniel nodded. I only stayed there for half a year before going abroad. Suddenly it clicked. No wonder I'd never heard of him. If he had been someone like that, he would have been the sensation of the whole school. Daniel chuckled softly. What kind of person do you think I am? I searched my mind for words to describe him: handsome, noble, like a deity from the heavens. It turned out I had such a good impression of him in my mind. Daniel lowered his gaze, his eyes burning. With intensity as they fixed on me, he softly said, 6 years ago, I met a girl here who shone even brighter. My mind flashed and I was stunned. That person can't be me, right? but I'm sure I've never seen him before.
Yeah.
Daniel didn't respond, seeming lost in his own memories. He softly said, "That day, I happened to pass by the art studio and looked in through the window. A girl in a white dress with a high ponytail was focused on her painting. The sunlight streamed through the window and fell on her, as if casting a halo around her. She was very beautiful. At that moment, I knew there was a girl like that in the school. Second time I saw her was at the welcome party for new students. She played a beautiful piano piece, and that's when I learned her name was Jenny. Back then, I was indeed a prominent figure at the school. After the party, many new students eagerly wanted to get to know me, but she seemed not to notice me at all. Later, I would sometimes take a detour past the studio and run into her many times. Each time, she was absorbed in her own world, as if everything outside didn't matter to her. Hearing this, my eyes already slightly reddened, and my voice caught in my throat. What happened next? Did you go abroad? Daniel snapped back to reality, looking deeply into my eyes. Yes, he replied softly. My original plan was to go abroad, but meeting you was unexpected. I never thought that even after I left, your image would linger in my heart for 5 full years. Those words clenched my heart like a large hand, and tears welled up uncontrollably, blurring my vision. Honestly, I know I've always been good-looking. Since childhood, many people praised me, and I received countless love letters. Perhaps it's this affection that kept someone thinking of me for 5 years, something I never imagined nor dared to hope for. I looked up at Daniel. Why do you never come looking for me? I asked. Daniel gently raised his hand to wipe away the tears at the corner of my eye, his voice tinged with dryness. When I came back, you were already with Michael, so I had to hide my feelings. But I didn't expect you to apply for a position at the group. Maybe this was a chance given to me by fate. I sniffed and asked, So, you intentionally made me your secretary? I thought I was promoted because of my abilities. Promoting me to secretary was my selfish wish, Daniel said softly, playfully tapping my nose. Did you really think that if the company's HR didn't approve your resume, it wouldn't have reached me? I pressed my lips together and asked, Who are you going to marry? That day, at the Civil Affairs Bureau, since you can't stop thinking about me, how could you agree to marry another woman? Daniel chuckled. Madame, don't you understand? How could I marry another woman before you? When the heart is suddenly stirred, it's beyond retrieval. I was stunned for a long time before finally realizing my heart was pounding faster and faster. I asked, trembling, Were you looking for me that day? Daniel's eyes burned with intensity. I think Michael doesn't deserve you. I originally planned to stop you from marrying him, but I didn't expect Michael to leave you. Everything seems like a coincidence, but it's actually his long-planned scheme. This seemingly indifferent man harbors deep love for the girl from years ago that hasn't faded over time, much like aged spirits that grow stronger the longer they're stored. I stood on my tiptoes, wrapping my arms around his neck, and pressed my lips to his. I kissed him tenderly. You for not giving up on me? In the past, I thought Michael liked me at least. He was very caring before Emily came back. Now that I have a comparison, I realize Michael's kindness was just because I shared similarities with Emily. I once hanged myself from that tree because of Michael, yet I couldn't see the gaze that had fallen upon me from behind. Back now, it was truly hopelessly foolish. Fortunately, Daniel didn't give up. He wiped away my tears, lowered his eyes, and gently kissed my forehead with the utmost tenderness. Jenny, I finally married my girl. He took my hand, his long fingers slipping through mine, leading me to walk leisurely out of the studio. The autumn sunlight poured over us, stretching our shadows long as evening approached. I went home. Daniel headed to the study. Shower, I came out, picked up my phone, replied to a few messages, and casually opened my moments to check. Suddenly I saw that Daniel rarely posted there. The only picture was of my silhouette at Peking University today, with the caption, Wishes fulfilled. Curious. I clicked on his profile picture and was surprised to find that he hadn't stopped posting on moments, he had just blocked me. Before I scrolled further, I saw his first post, a picture of my back in the studio, captioned, "She seems to really like painting." The second was a shot of someone playing basketball from behind, with the caption, "Is there someone she likes on the court?" My hand holding the phone trembled as I quickly clicked through each moment in a circle. 5 years went by in silence. Then, 2 years ago, there was still an image of my back, captioned, "It's been 5 years, and I finally saw her again. But she's with other men now, and she seems to really like that guy." I scrolled through a few more posts, then saw the moments from the day we got our marriage certificate. I finally married my girl. From that point on, everything in his circle was about my daily life. I hadn't even noticed. My eyes blurred, tears streaming uncontrollably down my face. My heart felt sour and bitter, making it hard to breathe. It turned out that all these years, he had been quietly standing behind me, watching from a place I couldn't see. When I saw others around me, I didn't even dare to disturb them. He, Daniel, the president of the group, should have been shining, the center of attention. Yet for me, he was so timid. I stood up and headed straight for the study. When I pushed open the door, Daniel looked up at me. Seeing my red eyes, he immediately stood up and strode toward me. I rushed into his arms, holding him tightly. Daniel embraced me back and asked in a hushed voice, "Why are you crying?" I carried a sob. "Daniel, why are you so foolish? Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, "What would you have done if I really married Michael that day?" Daniel knew I had seen his moments. Gently, he patted my back and said softly, "As long as you're happy, nothing else matters." I looked up at him, tears still staining my face, and smiled. "Daniel, from now on, I only like you." The last time I saw Michael was at a banquet I attended with Daniel. He called out to me and I had to stop, my feet eager to leave. The woman beside him wasn't Emily. I had heard that Emily had become the girlfriend of some rich second-generation kid. He looked at me with complex eyes and asked, "Jenny, how have you been lately?" I glanced at him lightly. "Without you and Emily by my side, I'm doing just fine." Michael frowned, still looking at me as if I were a dazzling pearl he refused to give up. He asked, "Does Daniel treat you well?"
Well,
I chuckled softly. "Michael, I really have to thank you for not marrying me. It allowed me to marry Yunjo. I'm very happy now, so please don't come to disturb me again." With that, I turned and walked over to Daniel, took his hand gently, and said softly, "Let's go home." Daniel looked back at Michael, who was still staring at me, and whispered, "Okay?" And that's where the story ends.